Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I just moved into the house 2 weeks before everything started. It was a quiet little place in a suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. Modest, one story, with a decent-sized backyard and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. I'd been living in a cramped apartment downtown for years, and this move felt like a fresh start. I was working remotely as a graphic designer, single, and just looking for peace and space. Most days were uneventful, filled with work, podcasts in the background, and the occasional trip to the nearby grocery store. The neighborhood had that whole cookie-cutter charm thing going. Lawns too neat, fences all the same color, and kids riding scooters down the sidewalks until dinner. The second Saturday after I moved in, I was hauling some boxes from the garage to the living room when I heard someone call my name. Not just my first name, my full name, like someone reading it off a yearbook. I turned and saw a guy standing at the edge of my driveway, holding a six-pack of beer and grinning like he'd just seen a ghost. It took me a second, but I recognized him. Eric Chambers. We'd gone to high school together. We weren't close back then, more like people who had gym class at the same time and maybe shared a group project once. He looked about the same, maybe a little scruffier, with a buzz cut and a tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve. Eric acted like it was fate. "No way you live here now too," he said, walking right up like we were lifelong friends. I was polite. It was weird, sure, but not threatening. He asked if I wanted help with the boxes, then offered to come by later and catch up properly. I didn't have the heart to say no. That night, he showed up around 7, this time with two guys I'd never seen before. They introduced themselves as Manny and Roach, which, yeah, I should have known right then. They weren't necessarily rude, but they gave off this energy, like they were constantly looking around, assessing things. Manny kept commenting on how spacious my place was, and Roach asked if I had any roommates, like 3 separate times. Over the next week, Eric started dropping by unannounced. Sometimes in the middle of the day while I was working, sometimes around 9 or 10 at night. He'd always have someone new with him, different guys every time, none of whom seemed particularly friendly or interested in me. The vibe started shifting quickly. One afternoon I caught one of them, some guy with a neck tattoo and torn cargo shorts, trying to open my hallway closet while I was in the kitchen getting water. He laughed it off like he was just looking for the bathroom, but the bathroom was visible from where he stood. I started making excuses after that, saying I was busy, that I had meetings, even pretending to not be home once when I saw Eric's car parked across the street. Things got tense the night I finally told Eric to stop coming over. He'd shown up with yet another guy I didn't know, this one older, maybe late 30s, heavy-set and silent the entire time. I opened the door just wide enough to talk through the screen and told him, as calmly as I could, that I had a lot going on and needed space. He stared at me for a second too long before forcing a laugh, like he didn't believe me. Sure, he said, stepping back. "Didn't mean to bug you." But as he turned to leave, he added, "You should really think about locking that side gate. Anyone could just walk in." That stuck with me. I hadn't even noticed the gate was unlatched. The weird part was, I never used it. That same night, I went around the house double-checking all the locks. I even set the home alarm system, which came with the place and had been working fine since I moved in. I remember testing it when I first unpacked. Front door, back door, motion sensors by the hallway. It gave me peace of mind. But the next morning, the panel showed a system error. I figured maybe I'd entered the wrong code the night before or something glitched. I reset it. But by the following afternoon, it was off again, and this time the screen was completely black. I called the company, and the tech on the phone told me the system had been manually disabled at the main panel, which was in the laundry room. That freaked me out. I hadn't touched the main panel since the walkthrough with the realtor. I went straight to the panel, and sure enough, the cover was slightly ajar, like someone had opened it and never bothered to snap it shut again. That's when I realized I'd installed a basic security camera in the living room that pointed toward the front door and part of the hallway. It came with the house, and I hadn't paid much attention to it, but it was synced to an app on my phone. I sat down on the couch and opened the footage from the last 2 nights. I don't even know what I expected. Maybe a raccoon breaking in or something stupid. What I saw made my stomach turn. Around 3:12 a.m. The night before, someone had slipped in through the side door, the one connected to the gate Eric warned me about. The camera caught a man in a hoodie walking carefully, almost professionally, across the living room toward the panel in the laundry room. He moved like he'd been there before, like he knew exactly where the alarm was. He never looked directly at the camera, but there was a moment when he paused, glancing toward the hallway. His build was familiar. Too familiar. I replayed it 3 times before accepting it. It was Eric. He had the same stupid wristband he always wore, the one from a county fair we went to back in high school that he thought was lucky. He never took it off. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there replaying the footage over and over, trying to process how fast everything had spiraled. I kept thinking about every guy he'd brought over, the way they looked around the house, commented on my things, asked weird questions. It wasn't just social awkwardness. It had been scouting, planning. And I'd let it happen, smiling and nodding like an idiot because we went to the same high school a decade ago. The worst part? I had no idea what they'd done or touched while I was sleeping. If the camera hadn't caught him, I probably never would have noticed anything was wrong. The next morning, I went to the police with the footage and filed a report. The officer I spoke with took it seriously, especially after I told him about the disabled alarm and the steady stream of strangers. They said they'd look into it, which wasn't exactly reassuring. But they did suggest I stay somewhere else for a few nights, just to be safe. I packed a bag and drove to my sister's place across town, not telling anyone I was leaving, not even my closest friends. I figured the fewer people who knew where I was, the better. I also called a local company to install a full security system with motion detectors, floodlights, and cameras in every direction. The last real twist came 2 days later. I got a call from a detective who had followed up on my report. Apparently, Eric had a record. Minor stuff mostly, trespassing, petty theft, but enough to raise concern. And get this, 2 of the guys who had been at my house with him had been arrested 3 weeks earlier in connection with a break-in just a few blocks from where I lived. Same pattern: befriend, observe, disable, rob. Except in that case, the homeowner was out of town and the house was cleared out. Electronics, jewelry, even their dog's crate. The detective said it was likely I was next. After that, I never heard from Eric again. He didn't text, didn't swing by, nothing. I don't know if he got scared off when he realized I'd reported him, or if someone warned him the police were asking questions. Either way, I took the hint and put the house up for sale that summer. I couldn't relax there anymore, not with the memory of someone walking through my home while I slept. I don't think I'll ever fully get over it. There's something uniquely violating about someone pretending to be your friend just so they can rob you. I still check my doors 3 times before bed. It was fall of last year when things started to shift. I was living with my girlfriend, Jessica, in a 2-bedroom rental on the north side of Milwaukee. We'd been together a little over 5 years. Stable, comfortable, the kind of rhythm where you know exactly what kind of cereal the other one buys without asking. I worked nights as a field tech for a logistics company, which meant I was often out between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., and Jessica worked days at a dental clinic downtown. We didn't see each other as much during the week, but our weekends were sacred. Or they used to be. I remember the exact moment I felt the change. She came home one Thursday, early October. Her energy was different. Her eyes were tired, makeup still on but smudged, and her hello kiss was rushed. She mentioned a new coworker, Mallory, said she transferred in from another branch and had been through a lot. Jessica had always been a people person, but she usually had boundaries. This time, she got invested quick. In a matter of days, she started texting with Mallory constantly, even after hours. At first, I thought it was just empathy, but it didn't take long for it to get weird. Jessica started staying late at work more often. Even on days I knew her schedule had her off by 5. When I asked, she'd brush it off. Mallory's having a hard time, or she needed someone to talk to. I didn't think too much of it until one night. I came home from a long shift and noticed a second phone charging behind our couch. I don't know what made me pull the plug and look at it, maybe instinct. It was a cheap burner, no case, no lock screen, and loaded with short cryptic messages, mostly just addresses and times. One of them was a convenience store that had been robbed a few nights earlier. My stomach sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. People leave old phones around, maybe she bought it for emergencies, who knows? I told myself not to spiral, but things kept stacking up. A week later, I opened the cabinet under the bathroom sink and found an envelope taped behind one of the drawers. Inside, a little over $2,000 in rubber-banded stacks. Small bills, all 20s and 10s. I swear I stood there staring at it for a full minute, like my brain didn't want to catch up with my eyes. Jessica had never been shady with money. We split rent, had a shared account. I didn't even know she had cash like that. That night, I waited until Jessica was asleep and checked the burner again. I know it's a breach of trust, but I was past the point of pretending everything was fine. The texts were short and emotionless, like instructions. 9th and Howell, 11:20. Basement, don't knock. One message simply said, he's watching the wrong house. It felt like reading the pieces of something bigger, but the context was missing. There were no names, no emojis, nothing that felt personal. Just this cold string of messages like someone planning routes or warning someone about surveillance. And always sent late at night. The more I tried to pretend I didn't know what I knew, the worse it got. Jessica was becoming hollow. That's the only way I can explain it. She'd sit on the couch with the TV on, but not really watching. She started jumping at small sounds, like the sound of the fridge kicking on or a car door outside. One Saturday morning, I asked her point blank if something was going on, and her eyes welled up instantly. But instead of answering, she just shook her head, whispered, "I can't," and left to go for a drive. She didn't come back until late that night. I didn't sleep the whole day. It was around then that I started noticing Mallory's name popping up in the local news. Not directly, but stories that lined up with things Jessica had mentioned casually. Fires, thefts, a missing woman that lived 2 streets over from her co-worker's supposed apartment. I even tried searching Mallory's last name on Facebook, LinkedIn. Nothing came up, like she didn't exist before a few months ago. One night, desperate for answers, I followed Jessica. She had told me she was going to Walgreens for cough drops. But I watched her drive past the store and pull into an old duplex on Claremont Street. Lights off, place looked half abandoned. She stayed inside for over 2 hours. When she got home, she was pale. Like really pale. Her lips had that bluish tint, and her shirt sleeve was damp, like she'd been sweating but also freezing at the same time. I didn't say anything. I was too stunned. I just watched her go to the bathroom and sit on the edge of the tub for 15 straight minutes staring at the wall. When I walked in, she flinched. That was when I noticed a deep scratch across her wrist. It wasn't fresh, but it was recent enough to still be red and raised. I asked her what happened. She looked me in the eye and said, "Mallory's in trouble, but it's too late to walk away now." I didn't press her that night. I wanted to, but something about the way she said it, like she was protecting me from something, froze me. The next day, while she was out, I went back to the Claremont duplex. I told myself I was just going to drive by, but I ended up parking across the street for over an hour. It was even more run down in daylight. Boarded windows, dead grass, a plastic chair tipped over on the porch. Eventually, a man came out. Mid-40s maybe, shaved head, military posture. He locked the door behind him and walked straight to a black SUV. No plates. The second he drove off, I left. Back home, I made a decision. I waited for Jessica to fall asleep that night, then took everything I had, cash, burner phone, the notes I'd written about the texts, and brought it all to a friend of mine who works with the city police. I didn't give him her name. I just asked him to run a quiet check on the address and see if any active investigations were linked to it. He texted me the next day, "Do not go back there. That place is flagged in an open federal case, stay out of it." He wouldn't tell me anything more, just that. That same week, Jessica came to me crying, said she needed to tell me something but was afraid it'd make me hate her. She told me Mallory wasn't really her co-worker. She had met her at a support group she was trying out, some kind of grief therapy she'd joined without telling me. Mallory had a magnetic energy, she said. Charismatic. Intense. She told Jessica that she was running from an abusive man and needed a safe place to crash now and then. Jessica believed her, gave her rides, let her stash some stuff at the house. Then, little by little, she got sucked in. Mallory asked her to pick up packages, make deliveries, no questions. And Jessica did. It's been almost 7 months since we cut contact. Jessica ended things with Mallory and even changed her phone number. She started seeing a therapist. We're still together, but something between us is cracked. I don't know how much of what she told me was the truth. I never saw Mallory again, but sometimes I catch Jessica staring out the window a little too long, like she's waiting for someone to come back. And once, about a month ago, I found another envelope. Not under the sink this time, but inside one of her winter boots. It was empty. Just a note inside, folded once. It said, "You made the right choice." I used to think I knew my friends well. We'd been close since college, late-night study sessions, beach bonfires, drunken karaoke, all that history. So when Marcus got promoted to head of operations at his firm, we figured a celebratory weekend camping trip was long overdue. 7 of us made it. Me, Marcus, Brian, Sam, Josh, Tyler, and Nate. We picked a remote trail in Oregon, one Nate claimed he knew well. The plan was simple. Hike an early Friday, set up camp by the lake, drink, roast stuff, hike back Sunday. We'd done this kind of thing before, nothing wild. But this time, the vibe felt different before we even left the parking lot. The tension started small, like static in the air. Josh and Brian barely made eye contact, which wasn't totally surprising given their fallout a year ago over a girl. Tyler was unusually quiet, and Sam kept checking his phone even though we had no service. We all joked and laughed like normal, but it felt like everyone was walking around invisible landmines. I chalked it up to stress or hangovers. It was only later that I realized someone had come out there with more than just a sleeping bag and marshmallows on their mind. Friday night was great, honestly. We reached the lake by late afternoon, set up the tents, and started drinking by the fire. Marcus gave a little speech, cheesy but genuine, and we all toasted to making it. Someone even brought cigars. The stars were insane that night, scattered across the sky like powdered sugar on black velvet. We told dumb stories, laughed till we choked, and by midnight most of us had stumbled into our tents. But I remember Nate stayed out, just pacing near the tree line with his hands in his hoodie pocket, staring out at nothing. I asked if he was good. He gave a half smile and said, "Just soaking it all in." The next morning, things got weird fast. We planned to do a loop hike that circled back to the lake by evening, leaving our gear behind. Nate volunteered to mark the trail with orange ribbons he'd brought, since the path wasn't fully maintained. No one questioned it. But halfway through the hike, Brian started saying he was sure we'd passed the same rock formation twice. Then Sam noticed one of the markers pointing in 2 directions. At first, we joked about Nate being a terrible navigator. But by the 3rd confusing junction, no one was laughing. The woods out there weren't just dense, they were disorienting. The kind where trees look cloned and you lose cell bars the moment you breathe. By late afternoon, we were completely turned around. Josh was getting snappy, accusing Nate of screwing around or not paying attention, but Nate just kept shrugging and saying, "This is where the trail goes, I marked it myself." That didn't help. Every turn we took felt like it led us deeper into the forest, not back to the lake. It wasn't just that we were lost. It was the way the forest seemed to close in on us. Sound got swallowed. Even the birds felt too quiet. Haley, who usually kept her cool, finally snapped and demanded we turn back the way we came. But that only led to more confusion, more mismatched markers, and more panic. By the time the sun started dropping behind the trees, the air shifted. It got colder, damp, and unnervingly still. We argued about splitting up to cover more ground, but no one wanted to be alone. Brendan tried pulling up a map on his phone, even though we all knew we had zero service. Then Tyler checked his backpack for the emergency GPS locator, and it was gone. Not just the GPS, his flashlight too, and the spare food pack he always kept clipped to the side. We thought maybe he dropped it, until Brian checked his own gear and realized his compass and whistle were missing too. That's when it hit us. This wasn't an accident. Someone had taken that stuff on purpose. I still remember the look on Marcus's face. He went pale, just stood there blinking like he was trying to reboot. That moment was when the trip stopped being annoying and officially turned into something darker. Someone among us was actively sabotaging the group. There was no other explanation. Someone we had laughed with the night before had spent the evening quietly removing gear, redirecting trail markers, maybe even leading us in circles. My stomach dropped. I looked at Nate. His eyes darted between us, face unreadable. And suddenly I wasn't sure if I'd ever actually known him at all. We kept moving, hoping we'd stumble across something familiar, but all we found was a clearing with remnants of an old fire pit. Not ours. A half-burnt stick still stuck out of the ash. There were boot prints around it, some of them fresh. Josh bent down and pointed at a half-buried granola wrapper on the edge of the clearing. It was one of ours. We hadn't been there. Someone had taken our stuff and left it here. Like a breadcrumb trail we were never meant to follow. I can't explain why, but in that moment I felt watched. Like whoever had done this wasn't just playing a prank. They wanted us desperate, maybe even scared. We decided to camp right there in the clearing. Not because it was safe, but because it was open enough that we'd hear if someone approached. No one said it out loud, but I think we all knew we weren't just lost. We were being led. I stayed up most of the night with Brendan, taking turns watching the tree line while everyone else tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard crunching leaves. Not animal movement. Human steps. Slow, deliberate. I shone my flashlight toward the trees, but the beam just hit mist and branches. Then I saw it, another orange ribbon, tied freshly to a tree just outside our camp, where none had been before. At first light, we followed the stream downhill, hoping it would eventually take us to a road or back to the lake. We moved fast like we were being hunted. No one even spoke. After an hour, Haley suddenly cried out. She'd found her missing sleeping bag wedged between two rocks near the water. It was soaked, almost like someone had tried to weigh it down and push it downstream. There was no logical reason for it to be there. I felt this cold spike of fear stab the back of my neck. Someone had been messing with us all night, and they'd been close enough to walk through our camp undetected. We finally made it back to the lake around noon. Our tents were still there, but they'd been torn open, slashed down the sides. Brendan's backpack was gone completely, and so was the car key we'd stashed in it. Tyler started yelling Nate's name, but he was already gone. Disappeared. No note, no trace. We waited hours, walking the perimeter, calling out for him, even checked if he'd made it back to the parking lot somehow. Nothing. We eventually had to hike 6 miles out using Haley's backup key, which she'd hidden in the sole of her boot. She hadn't told anyone about it, and I'm honestly convinced that's the only reason we made it out. 2 days later, Nate texted the group chat. No apology, just a single line. "Glad you all made it out okay." Then he left the chat. We haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he was trying to prove a point or if something snapped in him. Maybe he thought it was some twisted lesson. Or maybe he was just unraveling and decided to take us all down with him. I still think about those ribbons, the missing gear, the fact that none of us woke up when he crept through the camp. He had every opportunity to hurt someone directly, and he didn't. but he came close. Too close. I haven't gone camping since. I sold my tent. Every now and then, I wake up from dreams where I'm back in that clearing and there's a ribbon hanging right above my head. All I can say is, if you ever plan a trip with people you used to know, be sure you still know them. 'Cause sometimes the scariest thing out in the woods is the person you brought with you. I had just moved to Charlotte for my first full-time job after college. Marketing assistant at a mid-sized software company downtown. New city, new apartment, new everything. I didn't know anyone, and most evenings were just me eating leftovers on my secondhand couch, pretending I had the energy to explore the nightlife. That's probably why I got attached so quickly when Lena started talking to me at work. She was a graphic designer, cool as hell, always had a funny story. Always the first to suggest happy hour. Within a couple weeks, we were eating lunch together, texting memes, and hanging out on weekends like we'd known each other for years. Lena was the kind of person who made you feel seen. She remembered that I liked my coffee black, noticed when I changed the little charm on my bag, and could finish my sentences before I did. I chalked it up to being really compatible. She just got me. She even joked once, "You know, I might as well be your twin at this point," when we accidentally wore similar outfits to the office. At first, I laughed, but I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments where it felt like she wasn't just mirroring me, she was studying me. It started subtly. A week after I mentioned my favorite band, she showed up wearing their concert tee. Then she dyed her hair a shade suspiciously close to mine and bought the same pair of sneakers I had raved about. I told myself it was flattery, or maybe just coincidence. But then she added my roommate on Instagram, and 2 days later, she showed up at a birthday party I'd mentioned offhandedly, uninvited. "I figured you wouldn't mind," she said with a grin, already pouring herself a drink in my kitchen. Everyone thought she was hilarious. I tried to shake off the unease, but I couldn't stop watching how comfortable she was, walking through my apartment like it was hers. Things came to a head one Thursday night. I had a splitting headache after work and bailed early on dinner plans with coworkers. I took the back stairwell to my apartment, habit from growing up in buildings with unreliable elevators, and when I opened the door, I froze. Lena was inside, not on the couch, not waiting for me with takeout like she'd done before. She was at my desk, hunched over my laptop, USB drive plugged in. The room was dark except for the screen glow lighting up her face, and she didn't even flinch when I stepped in, just slowly turned like she'd expected me. For a split second, neither of us said anything. I think my brain just stalled, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Lena stood up slowly, still holding the USB stick, her expression unreadable. "You weren't supposed to be home yet," she said, voice calm like she was scolding me for ruining a surprise. My mouth opened, but no words came out. She stepped toward me and I instinctively backed up, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. "Look, it's not what it looks like," she said, but she didn't stop moving. She reached for something in her coat. My coat, actually. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just copying me. She'd been collecting things, logging into my accounts, wearing my clothes. I snapped out of it and reached for my phone. She lunged. The whole thing was messy and fast. She shoved me hard. I stumbled into the wall and she bolted for the door. I chased after her, but she was gone before I even made it down the stairs. I called the cops right away, hands shaking so much I could barely hit the numbers. When they arrived, they did a quick sweep and asked me if anything was stolen. That's when I realized the real damage wasn't going to be missing jewelry or electronics. It was what she'd taken digitally. My bank info, personal documents, even copies of my passport I'd scanned for a recent job onboarding. Everything she needed to become me. Over the next few weeks, my life unraveled in ways I didn't even know were possible. My credit tanked. My bank accounts were drained. A car loan in my name appeared in another state. I started getting emails from credit cards I'd never applied for. I was calling banks, freezing everything, filing police reports. Every call led to another dead end. Lena, if that was even her real name, was a ghost. No one at work knew where she'd gone. Her number was disconnected. HR said her emergency contact was a fake. The worst part? Some of my coworkers thought I was making it all up. "You guys were close, right?" one guy said. "You sure you didn't give her your info?" I didn't even know how to respond. I moved apartments a month later, not just because of her, but because I couldn't sleep. Every night I'd jolt awake convinced I heard my door open. I started locking everything, drawers, laptop, even my bedroom door. I'd never thought about how easy it is for someone to just slide into your life, to copy, mimic, absorb everything that makes you, you. And the scary thing is, she was so good at it, I don't think I would have ever noticed if I hadn't come home early that night. There's probably a version of this story where I didn't, where she just kept going. Eventually, the police traced some of the fraudulent activity to an Airbnb rental under my name in Florida. They found a laptop there, but no Lena. The fingerprint analysis came back inconclusive, and none of the surrounding cameras had a clear shot of her face. Whoever she was, she knew exactly how to slip through cracks. I spent months cleaning up the mess. Paperwork, calls, affidavits. I had to hire a lawyer to help fix my credit and freeze anything linked to my social security number. The entire process drained me, not just financially, but emotionally. I kept thinking about every conversation we'd had, every dumb inside joke. It wasn't just theft. It felt like erasure. What I still struggle with is how convincing she was. She didn't just want access to my life. She wanted to be me, down to the small stuff. She once borrowed my lip balm, and later I saw her buy the exact same brand in bulk. She copied my Spotify playlists. She even started talking like me, using the same weird phrases I grew up with that no one else ever used. At the time, I found it funny. Now it makes my stomach turn. I wasn't just her friend, I was a template. A few months ago, I got a strange text from an unknown number. "Hey, can you believe it's been a year? Miss your laugh." No name, no context, just that. I don't know if it was her, but I blocked it immediately. I'd love to say I've moved on, and in some ways I have. I have a new job now in a different city, and I'm careful about who I let in. But I don't think I'll ever fully let my guard down again. Not after someone smiled at me every day, told me I was like family, while slowly replacing me behind the scenes. In the end, I got most of my finances sorted. I had to fight like hell to reclaim my identity, prove to companies and institutions that I was me. It took nearly a year. But the worst scar wasn't the stolen money or accounts. It was that for a long time after, I didn't trust anyone. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't even trust myself. It's wild how quickly someone can go from a pleasant memory to a living nightmare. Back in March last year, I was living in a rental house just outside Eugene, Oregon, trying to piece things back together after a tough breakup and a messy job switch. I was freelancing from home, mostly editing transcripts for a legal service, and had started picking up old hobbies again, running, painting, re-watching trashy detective shows. I wasn't socializing much, but it felt like a phase of calm. That's when I got a random message on Instagram from a guy named Derek Simmons, someone I hadn't spoken to in over 10 years. We'd been part of the same friend group back in high school, and I remembered him being a bit intense, but funny and clever. His message was casual, just, "Hey, I saw you pop up. Hope life's been good to you." I didn't think twice before replying. Derek was charming in that way people are when they remember oddly specific things about you. He brought up how I used to sneak fruit snacks into calculus class and how we once got caught TPing a teacher's house on Halloween. It felt disarming, almost nostalgic. We started chatting off and on and eventually met up for coffee. In person, he looked a little more serious than I remembered. He'd grown a beard, and there was a tightness in his smile, like it was always slightly forced. But the conversation flowed easily, and I convinced myself I was just reading into it too much. Within a few weeks, he was texting daily, sending memes, even offering to run errands or help with stuff around the house. It all seemed sweet at first, especially when I felt so emotionally depleted. But then he started showing up unannounced. Once, I mentioned in passing that I had a dentist appointment, and an hour later he texted, "Good luck, I saw your car in the lot." I kind of laughed it off, but it gave me a weird jolt. Then there was the time I went for a jog at my usual park and he, coincidentally, pulled into the same lot just as I was stretching. "Thought I'd take a walk," he said. He wasn't threatening, just there, a lot. My roommate Lisa noticed too. She called it rom-com turned stalker doc. I brushed it off until one of my old friends, Megan, messaged me and said she'd heard I was hanging out with Derek again. She told me flat out to be careful, that he had a history. She didn't go into much detail, but said he'd become obsessed with a girl a few years back, and that it hadn't ended well. I finally brought it up to him one night after dinner at a bar downtown. He'd offered to walk me to my car, but I stopped on the sidewalk and told him we needed to talk. I asked about what Megan had said. At first he looked confused, then hurt, and then angry. Too fast. "People love to twist things," he said. "That girl lied to everyone. I was the one who got hurt, not her." His voice dropped low like he was holding something back. I told him we needed space, that things had been moving too fast, and I just didn't feel comfortable anymore. He didn't yell. He just stared at me, like trying to memorize my face. Then he smiled, but not the usual one. This one felt empty. "You'll change your mind," he said quietly. And with that, he walked away into the night. I tried to distance myself after that night. I muted his number, blocked him on social media, even started parking a few blocks away from my house just so it wouldn't be obvious when I was home. For a while it worked. A week passed without anything weird, and I started to think maybe I'd overreacted. Then, late one Wednesday, I came home from a run and found a bag hanging on my doorknob. Inside was a little bottle of my favorite tea from a specialty shop across town, the same one I'd once mentioned in passing during a conversation weeks ago. No note, no name, just that bottle, still cold. My stomach turned. I knew it had to be Derek. I hadn't told anyone else about that tea. That night I pushed a chair under the doorknob and barely slept. 2 days later, Lisa left town for the weekend to visit her boyfriend, which meant I'd have the place to myself. I didn't love the idea, but I told myself I was being paranoid. On Friday evening, I met up with some old coworkers for dinner at a restaurant downtown, some place with a rooftop bar and overpriced wine. Around 9 p.m., while I was mid-laugh, I noticed someone across the street standing too still. He wasn't close, but I could swear it was Derek. Same jacket, same posture. I blinked, and he was gone. It might have been someone else. I wanted to believe it was. Still, I excused myself early and took an Uber home, constantly checking behind us in the side mirror like a character in a bad thriller movie. When I got back, I locked every door and window, even the ones on the second floor. I turned on all the lights and kept the TV on in the living room while I curled up on the couch. Around midnight, I started hearing sounds. Very faint at first, like something tapping glass. I turned the volume down and held my breath. Nothing. Then again, tap, tap, tap coming from the back of the house. I stood slowly, heart hammering. There's a narrow hallway that leads to the sliding glass door that opens onto our tiny backyard. From the corner, I could see the curtains moving slightly, even though no window was open. I stepped closer, just enough to peek, and there he was, standing just inches beyond the glass door. Derek. His face was partially shadowed, but the way he was staring in, head tilted, eyes locked on the inside of the house. It was like he wasn't seeing a home, but a prize. He didn't knock. He didn't try to speak. He just stood there, breathing. I froze. My phone was still in the living room, and I didn't dare move fast enough to catch his attention. I backed up, keeping low until I could grab it from the coffee table. I texted Lisa, even though I knew she was hours away. Then I called 911. The dispatcher told me to stay calm and stay on the line. When I turned back to the hallway, he was gone. The cops got there about 12 minutes later, which felt like an hour and a half. I stayed on the phone the whole time, whispering updates from behind the kitchen island. When they arrived, I could see the red and blue light sweep across the walls and flood the backyard. I let them in, barely able to speak. 2 officers did a sweep of the area and found footprints outside the sliding door, clear as day. Men's boots, size 11, leading in from the alley behind the yard. But Derek was nowhere. They asked if I knew who it might be, and I gave them his full name and showed them the texts I hadn't deleted yet. One of the officers just nodded like he wasn't surprised. "We've heard that name before," he said. That part stuck with me. I never got full confirmation on what Derek had done to other people, but from that night forward, it was clear this wasn't some awkward miscommunication or lingering feelings. This was obsession, targeted, personal. I filed a police report, got a restraining order, and spent the next few weeks completely paranoid. Every creak in the house made me jump. I bought pepper spray and a security camera for the front and back doors. Lisa moved out a month later. She said it gave her the creeps, which I couldn't blame her for. I thought about leaving too, but something in me didn't want to give him that power. I switched up my routines, cut contact with anyone who still had ties to him, and tried to regain some normalcy. The scariest part is that he never tried to reach out again. Not once. No calls, no messages, no weird packages. It was like he vanished. Part of me wonders if that was the final act. Showing up like that, breaking the barrier between watching and approaching, and then disappearing to let the fear rot inside me. I still check the cameras every night. I still glance twice when a car slows near my street. But nothing. It's been almost a year now. The police never found him, and they never followed up beyond the initial report. Apparently, unless he shows up again or violates the restraining order directly, there's not much they can do. That's what the officer said. You'd be surprised how often these guys just move on. But it doesn't feel like he moved on. It feels like he's waiting, watching for the right moment, or maybe just content knowing he left his mark. I try not to spiral into paranoia, but it's hard not to when someone makes you feel like prey. I share this now because I know how easy it is to brush off red flags, especially when they're wrapped in charm and nostalgia. If something feels wrong, say something, do something. I was lucky, I know that. But I also know what it's like to freeze in place while someone stares through your glass door, like they already live in your world, like they already own it. I still think about that weekend more than I should. It was supposed to be a harmless little reunion. Me and 4 old friends from college, all in our late 20s, catching up at a rented cabin near Deep Hollow Lake. We'd all drifted into different corners of life, but once a year, we made the effort. That year, it was Nora's idea to host, and she picked the kind of place you'd see on a local postcard. 2 stories, creaky deck, trees pressed so close you felt like the forest was listening. I had just moved into a new job in Seattle and was eager for a break. We were all tired adults trying to pretend for a few days that we were still young and stupid. There were 5 of us. Nora, who organized everything. Jake, who still acted like he was 21. Amanda, who brought snacks and drama in equal measure. Troy, who mostly kept to himself. And Harper. Harper was the unpredictable one. The one who went off script in every conversation and sometimes didn't come back. In college, that made her fun. But now, it felt like we were all walking on glass around her. She'd drift into weird silences, snap suddenly, then laugh like nothing happened. That weekend, it was worse. She showed up late, already tipsy, and spent the first night arguing with Nora over some years-old grudge none of us even remembered. The second day, she disappeared for hours without telling anyone, came back muddy and barefoot, and claimed she'd gone on a vision walk. She interrupted Amanda mid-story to ask if we'd all be okay eating something that had absorbed moonlight. She tried to light sage in the living room and tripped over the rug, spilling wine across the couch. The rest of us laughed nervously and tried to keep things light. But by Sunday morning, everyone was drained. When it came time to pack up, Harper was nowhere to be found. Her phone was dead, and her bag was still by the couch, but we'd seen this before. She'd flake, disappear, and come back eventually with a bizarre story and zero apologies. It was Amanda who finally said what we were all thinking. "Let's just go. She always does this." We debated it for a few minutes, but no one was eager to stick around another hour. Troy even joked, "If she's trying to teach us a lesson, she'll be disappointed. We've already failed." So we left. We all texted her when we got signal again. No reply. Then a few days passed. Still nothing. After a week, Nora called her apartment, but no one picked up. Eventually, we shrugged it off like we always did. Harper was Harper. Erratic, flaky, theatrical. We assumed she'd resurface with some wild story about being stranded or following a fox into the woods or whatever strange thing her mind conjured up. It took nearly 4 months for her to show up again, and when she did, it wasn't with a story. It was with silence. She messaged Nora first, just one line. "You left me there on purpose." No hello, no explanation. Then she messaged me, same thing, word for word. It felt cold. Not angry, not emotional, just flat. Amanda got the same message, and so did Jake and Troy. No follow-up, no replies when we tried calling or texting back. It was like she wanted us to sit with it, and we did. It got under my skin in a way I can't explain. I knew we hadn't done anything malicious. We just made a tired, collective decision to go. But that sentence made it sound calculated, cruel. And I started wondering what really happened to her out there. The first time I saw her after that was at the grocery store, of all places. It was a random Tuesday in February, and I was checking out when I noticed someone standing a few feet behind me. Not in line, just watching. I turned, and it was Harper. Her hair was shorter, messier. She had dark shadows under her eyes and a thin red scar running down her left cheek, like something sharp had caught her. She didn't smile, didn't blink. Just stared until I fumbled my bag and hurried out of the store. I didn't even say her name. I felt like I'd seen a ghost that hadn't decided if it wanted to hurt me yet. From then on, it was little things. A voicemail with nothing but static. A burned Polaroid of the cabin left in my mailbox. One night I came home and found pine needles scattered across my kitchen counter. No broken window. No open door. Just that smell, damp and wild, and a small pile of green needles like someone had crumbled part of the forest onto my sink. I called Jake that night, and he said he'd been getting weird texts too. Photos of tree bark. One had a close-up of a muddy shoe, his own from that weekend. At first, we thought she was trying to scare us, but something about it didn't feel like a joke or a stunt. It felt personal. Nora finally broke the silence and went to visit her. Harper had moved out of her old place and was renting a basement room in someone's house a few towns over. Nora said she looked sick, thinner, twitchy, like she hadn't really slept in weeks. They talked, briefly. Harper didn't mention the cabin or the messages. But as Nora was leaving, Harper handed her something wrapped in a paper towel. It was a small, rusted key, and on the towel, written in shaky black marker, was, "Not everyone makes it back." Nora didn't know what it unlocked. None of us did, but after that, the fear settled in for real. We hadn't just left her behind. We had no idea what we'd left her in. About 2 weeks after Nora's visit, Amanda called me in the middle of the night, whispering like she thought someone might hear her. She said she'd woken up to someone knocking on her bedroom window, not the front door, her second-floor window. When she looked outside, there was no one, just a pile of dirt and pine cones on the windowsill. The same week, Jake's dog wouldn't stop barking at the back fence, and he found claw marks on the wood. Long, uneven, almost frantic. We started a group chat again, something we hadn't used since the cabin. Everyone was rattled. Even Troy admitted he'd been sleeping with a bat beside his bed. But what scared me the most was the letter. It showed up folded inside one of my old college notebooks that I kept on a shelf in the closet, one I hadn't touched in years. There was no envelope, no return address. Just a page covered in writing so dense and erratic it looked like it had been done by someone in a trance. It wasn't a direct message, more like a spiral of thoughts. Bits about being called into the trees, about hearing us laugh while she screamed, and one line repeated over and over. "You saw me, you heard me, you left anyway." I sat on my bedroom floor for hours that night, just staring at it. That notebook had been buried under old blankets and boxes. I still don't know how it got there. The final confrontation came on a Sunday morning. I was making coffee, still half asleep, when I noticed the smell, wet earth and cedar, like the forest had crept in through the vents. And then I saw her, Harper, standing at the edge of my backyard, barely visible through the fog. She wasn't trying to hide. She stood still, arms at her sides, staring directly at the house. I didn't go out there. I called the police. They arrived in less than 10 minutes, but by the time they checked the yard, she was gone. They didn't find footprints, just more pine needles and something carved into the side of the shed. I remember. After that, it stopped. No more notes, no more visits. Nora ended up moving across the country. Jake blocked every unknown number that came through. Amanda started therapy. As for me, I kept the letter. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself that we didn't imagine it. That she changed, and maybe we helped break her. But I also keep it because deep down I'm afraid she'll come back. And if she does, I want to remember exactly how it ended the first time. Some nights when the house is quiet and the wind rustles the trees, I still get up to check the backyard, just in case she's there, watching, waiting for one of us to open the door first. It's strange how easily desperation can make you overlook details that in hindsight seem obvious. Last year, after I got laid off from my job at the printing warehouse, everything slowed down. Days melted into each other. My savings weren't great, and the job market in my part of Ohio wasn't exactly booming. I found myself spending too much time on my porch with cold coffee, watching the neighborhood dogs chase cars. I needed something to do. Something that didn't make me feel like I was wasting oxygen. That's when I heard about Everstead Outreach, a local charity that organized food drives, winter clothing donations, and neighborhood repair projects. It was run by a man named Gerald Wyatt, someone people around here spoke about like a hometown saint. Gerald was the kind of guy who always looked like he'd just come back from a political fundraiser. Pressed shirts, leather shoes that somehow never looked scuffed, and a silver watch that caught the light every time he waved. He talked to everyone like he'd known them for years. He remembered names, details, even dog breeds. When I met him, I mentioned I used to run logistics at the warehouse, and the next week, he had me coordinating drop-off schedules and organizing inventory lists. It felt good to be useful again, to feel like I had a place. I wasn't being paid, but he always promised opportunities would open up for people who showed initiative. I bought into that hard. At first, everything felt genuine. We'd drive out to neighborhoods hit hard by the storms, unload boxes of donated blankets and hygiene kits, help patch roofs or install temporary tarps. I made friends with other volunteers, Lena, who ran a little daycare out of her home, and Marcus, a high school teacher who gave up his weekends to paint houses. But about 3 months in, I started noticing weird gaps in the records. Pallets would arrive, full of supplies, but the logs wouldn't match. Sometimes Gerald would scribble out entries on printed manifests, muttering something about vendor corrections or unexpected redirects. It was subtle, never a flashing red light, but I started keeping a copy of every inventory sheet I signed off on just in case. Then came the weird tension I couldn't quite place. Lena stopped showing up. Gerald said she had taken a leave for personal reasons, but he avoided looking anyone in the eye when he said it. Marcus and I tried texting her, but the messages either bounced or got no response. One evening, while reorganizing the storage unit behind the outreach center, I found a folded flyer with Lena's handwriting on the back. It had numbers, dates, and a few notes that seemed to reference shipments. One of the lines read, "Ask about the Forest Ridge deliveries. Quantities don't match." I stuffed it into my pocket and told myself I was overthinking things, but I stopped sleeping well after that. A couple of nights later, I stayed behind at the outreach center. Gerald had left early, and I told him I'd finish reorganizing the pantry since we had a big shipment scheduled for the weekend. I wasn't actually sorting anything, I was waiting. Something about Lena's note kept replaying in my head, and I wanted to see what happened after hours. Around 9:40 p.m. I heard the back door open. I killed the lights and crouched between two shelves stacked with canned goods. Gerald walked in, talking on the phone, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. Not the cheerful, politician-like tone he used during the day. This voice had weight, anger, control. I couldn't hear everything, but phrases like, "She should have kept her nose out," and "I told you I don't care what happens, just make sure it's quiet," froze me cold. The call didn't last long. He slammed a clipboard against the table and muttered something I couldn't catch. After a minute or two, he walked out, locking the door behind him. I didn't move until I heard his car pull away. When I finally got up, I realized I was sweating through my shirt. My first instinct was to leave, just walk away and pretend I didn't hear anything. But I couldn't shake the image of Lena's handwriting or how tense Marcus had been the last time I saw him. I didn't have a plan, just this growing feeling in my chest that I had stepped into something way bigger than food drives and charity drop-offs. The next day, I tried to act normal. Gerald greeted me like nothing had happened, asked if I could join him later for a donor meeting at a diner downtown. I agreed just to keep the routine going. I didn't want to tip him off. Before leaving for the meeting, I texted Marcus and asked if we could talk alone later that night. He said yes, but when I showed up at his house, no one answered the door. The lights were off, and his car was still in the driveway. I knocked a few more times, then left a message. That was a week ago. I haven't heard from him since. That night, I made copies of everything. Lena's note, the shipment logs, even a few voicemails from Gerald that started to sound more commanding than friendly. I didn't go to the police right away. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought no one would believe me. Gerald had been on local news, had plaques from the mayor, photos shaking hands with state reps. People trusted him. But I knew what I heard, and I was sure Lena and Marcus had discovered something too. Something they weren't supposed to, and if I didn't do something soon, I'd be next. I waited another day hoping Marcus would call back. When he didn't, I packed everything I had into an old shoebox and drove to a library 2 towns over. I used one of their public computers to send an anonymous email with all the documents to a local journalist I found digging into corruption stories, Erica Lowe, someone who'd written about shady deals at City Hall. I didn't include my name. Just wrote, "You should look into Everstead Outreach and Gerald Wyatt. Start with Forest Ridge, 2 volunteers went missing." I didn't expect a reply, but part of me felt a little lighter walking out of that library, like I wasn't the only one carrying this anymore. That night I slept with the windows locked and a hammer under my bed. I wish I was exaggerating. The fear wasn't loud or dramatic. It was this constant low-level hum, like the air was charged with static. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time someone knocked at the door, I checked the peephole twice. I started noticing the same black SUV parked across the street on random days. I memorized the plate. Nothing ever came of it, but the timing always lined up. Right after I sent the email. Right after I stopped by the outreach center to pick up my last box of things. I never saw Gerald again, and I never went back to Everstead. About 2 months later, a local news segment aired. Erica had followed the paper trail. Shell companies, redirected shipments, financial records that didn't match public tax filings. It wasn't a bombshell piece, but it was enough to raise eyebrows. Gerald stepped away from his position at Everstead. No charges were ever filed, but the center quietly closed its doors within weeks. The SUV disappeared too. I watched it all unfold from my living room, lights off, feeling like I'd pulled a thread that unraveled more than I expected. Lena and Marcus were never mentioned. No updates, no search, nothing. It was like they'd been erased, Sometimes I wonder if I did enough, if maybe I should have gone to the cops with my name on the report. But part of me still doesn't feel safe, like telling the whole truth would paint a target on my back that I'm not ready for. I live quieter now. I keep receipts, backup emails, and I don't trust smiling men with perfect shoes. But I still volunteer, just for places that don't have press conferences or designer watches. I still don't know what really happened to Lena, or if Marcus ever made it out of town. But I know this: Gerald Wyatt wasn't a philanthropist. He was a puppeteer with a clipboard and a smile. And I was lucky enough to see the strings before they wrapped around my neck too. When I got laid off in March, I wasn't exactly panicking, but I was definitely spiraling a bit. I'd been working in commercial logistics for almost a decade. Paperwork, tracking shipments, dealing with customs. Not glamorous, but steady. When the company downsized, I figured I'd be back on my feet within a month. 2 months passed. Savings dwindled. Confidence took a hit. That's when Trevor, my best friend since freshman year of high school, reached out with a business opportunity. He said it casually over lunch like it wasn't a lifeline. "You're good with operations. I need someone like that," he said. "It's clean, legit, and growing fast." I trusted him without question. Trevor had always been the charismatic one, the guy who could sweet-talk his way out of a ticket or into a VIP room without trying. We'd lost touch a bit over the years, but any time we reconnected, it felt like no time had passed. He showed me the space he was renting for the business. A sleek office above a warehouse in a quiet industrial area just outside the city. He said it was a logistics consultancy for high-value clients, crypto investors, collectors, small importers. Fancy enough to sound impressive, vague enough to not ask too many questions. He already had a website, invoices, business cards. Everything looked above board. At first, things were smooth. I was mostly handling client correspondence, organizing shipping logistics, arranging meetings. Nothing felt off. We weren't doing anything shady, at least, not that I could see. The weirdest thing was how guarded Trevor was with the client list. He'd handle the biggest deals personally and wouldn't let me into the financial side of things. "Just keeping everything clean," he'd say. "You focus on the operations, I'll handle the money." I didn't question it. Not yet. But I started to notice small inconsistencies, paperwork that didn't match up, tracking numbers that looped back on themselves, a package that sat in a warehouse for 2 weeks without moving, despite being marked as delivered. The moment things started to unravel was during a late-night email session. I was going through past shipments to find a missing invoice and opened a folder I hadn't seen before. Inside were dozens of encrypted PDFs labeled with initials and codes. I thought maybe it was just Trevor's quirky organization system. But when I decrypted one, out of pure curiosity, it wasn't client documentation. It was a detailed inventory of designer drugs, serial numbers, aliases, and transaction dates. It didn't even look recent. It went back almost a year. My hands got sweaty just looking at it. This wasn't a side hustle. This was organized, deliberate, and deeply illegal. And I was neck-deep in it without even realizing. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise in the apartment felt louder, like someone was listening. I kept replaying the past few weeks in my head, wondering how much I had unknowingly been involved in. I thought about walking away quietly, but my name was on contracts, emails, even a few supplier documents. If this ever got exposed, I wouldn't be seen as a bystander. I'd be part of it. The next morning, I confronted Trevor. I didn't accuse him directly. I just said I'd stumbled on files I didn't recognize and asked if there was anything I should know. He didn't even blink, just laughed and said, "Man, you're overthinking. Those are decoys. I set those up to scare off anyone snooping." He said it with this calm, cocky tone that sent a chill through me, like he'd rehearsed it. But I knew what I saw, and Trevor's calmness didn't sit right. I told him I needed time to think about staying on. He shrugged and said, "Do what you need to do." But that fake smile never left his face. That same evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a detective with the local PD, asking if I could come in for a routine clarification about a company I worked for. My stomach dropped. When I asked what it was about, he got quiet and said, "Just come in, it's better in person." I spent the night digging through every file I could access, deleting what I could, backing up what looked incriminating. I didn't know what Trevor had planned, but I had a gut feeling he was already 2 steps ahead. The next day at the station, they showed me surveillance footage. Me signing for a package, me driving a company vehicle, me unlocking the storage unit we used. The package, they said, contained counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The storage unit, they claimed, was linked to a known dealer. I couldn't breathe. I tried explaining that I was just the operations guy, that I didn't know what was in the shipments. The officer looked at me like he'd heard it 1,000 times. "Your name's all over this," he said. "Either you're the cleanest looking fall guy I've ever seen, or you're very good at playing dumb." That's when it hit me. Trevor had built the whole thing to run smooth until someone needed to take the fall. I was released that day, but only because I wasn't officially charged yet. "Don't leave town," the detective warned. I went straight to the office, but Trevor was gone. No warning, no note. The office was wiped clean. No computers, no files, nothing. It was like it had never existed. The warehouse downstairs was still there, but our access codes had been deactivated. I called him over and over, but his number was disconnected. His social media profiles were gone, just vanished. It felt like a trapdoor had opened beneath me and I hadn't even seen it coming. Over the next few days, I tried piecing together what I could. I tracked down an old supplier we'd worked with, this guy named Maurice, who ran a small trucking company out of Jersey. When I mentioned Trevor's name, Maurice paused and said, "He used to go by Jay back then." That confirmed what I feared. I never really knew Trevor at all. I wasn't the first guy he'd roped into one of his schemes. Maurice didn't say much more, just warned me to keep my head down. "He only calls people his friend when he needs something," he muttered before hanging up. That stuck with me. Every memory I had of Trevor suddenly felt staged, like I'd been cast in a role I didn't even know I was playing. With nowhere else to turn, I hired a lawyer. I drained what was left of my savings, just to have someone shield me from what was clearly coming. He was blunt. "Your best shot is proving negligence, not innocence." We built a paper trail, showed how I wasn't involved in any financial decisions, how my responsibilities were strictly operational. Luckily, I had emails, time-stamped chats, and a few dumb lucky texts from Trevor saying things like, "Don't worry, I'll handle the shady stuff." My lawyer told me to hold on to that one like it was gold. I still got dragged through months of investigations, and I was this close to being indicted. It all hinged on Trevor's absence. He was the ghost they couldn't pin down, and I was the only body they had left. Eventually, charges were dropped, but I didn't walk away clean. My name was tied to headlines. Friends stopped answering calls. I had to move out of state, start fresh. There's this itch in the back of my mind every time I fill out a job application now, wondering if they'll find my name connected to those old news articles. I even changed my last name. I don't think I'll ever really feel free of it. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear a knock on the door, half expecting Trevor to be there, flashing that same fake grin, acting like nothing ever happened. I think the worst part is that I wasn't even betrayed for money or revenge or anything dramatic. I was just convenient. I was someone he could mold into the exact shape he needed to pull this off, and I never saw it coming. That eats at me more than anything. Because it makes me question everyone I let into my life now. Every new friend, every handshake. I look for cracks. I listen for rehearsed lines, and if someone calls me bro too easily, I walk away.